Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear honorable speakers, Mr. Ambassador Abdul Basit Saab, who also remained former High Commissioner of Pakistan in India and also headed many other important positions. I would also like to welcome Mr. Pervez Iqbal Losi Saab, who is the chairman of Pakistan EU Friendship Federation. And soon we are going to join Mr. Shahzad Chaudhry, who is the Air Vice Marshal. Unfortunately, Ms. Huma Bukai, because of some personal emergency, could not join us. So this is an honor for me that in the presence of such seasoned people, I have to moderate this session. This session is very important and because this recent General Assembly session with the new political government in Pakistan, which is facing on one hand economic crisis and this recent climate change crisis and these floods, they are really creating, devastating effects on an impact on our economy and our society. So many people are displaced. So I would like you to highlight that how Pakistan is presenting its case at the international level, what happened in General Assembly session, any recommendation in the current crisis, how we build a strong narrative of Pakistan, how we maintain our international position, how we can work on our self-reliance and other challenges which Pakistan governance is facing at the moment. So first of all, I request honorable Abdul Basit Saab, who is the former high commissioner, to please shed light on this subject, and thank you very much for joining.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me the floor. Let me begin by making two broad observations. First is that diplomacy is a process and not an event, and should be taken in that spirit. Secondly, I think it is important to underline that decisions are not taken in New York or in Geneva or at these multilateral forums, though these forums are very important. And the UNGA, as you know, UN is the largest intergovernmental organization in the world with 193 members. And every year, all the member states get an opportunity to go there and represent their worldview and challenges which their countries with their respective regions are facing and how they would like to get to grips with them. And then countries like Pakistan, who confront a myriad of challenges in all areas, I think UNGA becomes all the more important that in addition to presenting our case from the podium of the United Nations General Assembly, we also attend many parallel meetings, and then these forums or these occasions also provide us an opportunity to have bilateral engagements, not only with international financial institutions, but also bilateral meetings on the margins of the UNGA session. So this session, unfortunately, came or was timed when the floods, as you very rightly pointed out, devastated Pakistan. Close to 33 million people got affected by unprecedented floods. So this was an occasion for us to not only underline the havoc being wreaked by climate changes, by the global warming. First, how Pakistan is addressing those issues, its repercussions, its implications, and then what we expect from the world. And then so many other areas of importance to Pakistan, for example, Jammu and Kashmir dispute, long-standing dispute, then Afghanistan, then Islamophobia, and so on and so forth. So I think, and then this UNGA was the first UNGA session attended by our newly elected Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. I think overall, in his speech, he covered all these areas, and I think the formulations which he adopted or made on these important issues were by and large, I would say, were okay. But on the other hand, my own feeling is that we could not really engage with the rest of the world as such, except one very important meeting took place, which was with the French President Emmanuel Macron. And that meeting, in my view, was long pending. We should have done that last year. But in any case, better, I mean, it is good that the two leaders met in New York and the ice was broken, because Pakistan is a country which would not like to have trouble in its relations with such important countries. So I'm glad that this meeting took place. And then our Prime Minister also met with the president of the World Bank and the executive director of the IMF. And those meetings were important given the overall situation as resulted from the recent floods. We definitely want rescheduling of our dates because that would be important. And then you know that the Prime Minister also attended the reception hosted by President Biden, and there they also kind of informally exchanged a few words. So I think overall the UNGA session was important for us. And then followed by that, our foreign minister visited Washington. That was an important visit in its own right because the Indian foreign minister was also visiting at the same time. And I'm glad that our foreign minister visited, and we are now trying to put our Pak-US relationship on a better trajectory, because we have seen that since the Biden administration came in, there was some tension brewing between the two countries. So by this visit, I hope that we will be able to ramp down the rhetoric, excessive rhetoric. And secondly, we would be able to define for ourselves a better trajectory to our mutual benefit. So overall, I would say that UNGA, it was good that the PM visited, but I still strongly feel, and this is my personal view, that at times there is no need for, because there were floods in Pakistan, and I personally was not expecting that our delegation would be top heavy, because people around the world watch closely whatever we do, whatever we say. So I think we should be sensitive to optics as well. Substance is no doubt very important, but optics are equally important. So in my view, we will yet to see, because the UN Secretary General's appeal to raise $160 million for the floods in Pakistan, to deal with the floods in Pakistan. I still do not know whether that appeal or the amount has been donated or not. As far as I know, the Secretary General appeal has not yet been, the pledges which have been made are not yet been, able to reach 160 million. So we would still, I think, need a gigantic effort on the part of the government of Pakistan, not only to deal with the results of the floods, but other important issues like Jammu and Kashmir dispute, our relations with India, and then pandemic issues, which were with healthcare, and so many other interlocking issues. So I hope that now the session has taken place. It is important to follow up. The problem with Pakistan has always been that we do take initiative in different areas, but then we can't sustain them to their logical end. It is important to build our institutional capacity, that whatever we discuss at the UN or on the margins of the UNGA session, then there should be institutions, organizations who take charge of pursuing those initiatives and sustain those initiatives. So I hope that this time around we would see at things differently, and we will be able to rise to the challenges which Pakistan has been facing in different areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basit. you rightly highlighted that it's good that government delegation participated well over there, but also optics are also important, that there should be a small delegation who should go there. And you also appreciated the UN Secretary General effort in this regard, and for the support for the people of Pakistan. And still many delegations are coming, and we really appreciate their support as well. Now let's move to Chairman EU Pakistan Friendship Federation, Honorable Pervez Iqbal Rosista. Kindly, many European delegations are also coming to Pakistan, and very high level delegations are coming to support the country at this humanitarian crisis. And how you see post Brexit scenario of European Union, and how Pakistan is important for them, and also some light on UN General Assembly session. Over to you, Pervez Iqbal sir.
यूरोपियन यूनियन और पाकिस्तान के तल्लकात is last 30 years we have good relation with the European Parliament, and there is our neighbor India always have created problem in the GSP plus, in the Kashmir occupied case, FATF, but European Parliament all the time stand with the Pakistani government, Pakistani people. For example, after the Brexit, then the UK Brexit, I think so. We have the people thinks we are very weak in lobby, but fortunate we have very close friend in the European Parliament from Italy, Germany, Belgium, Holland, France, Greek, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway. Uh, uh, but things are very important what we are doing of different time. Pakistani government changed, but we did not change the relationship with the EU is the biggest parliament of the world. We have good achievement in the EU delegation is going to Pakistan. For a moment we try to put a resolution on the flood affectee in the European Parliament, and those are the European Parliament parliamentarian are doing that. They need must to help the Pakistani peoples. United Nations is also do, but European Parliament is a big platform. European Parliament, European Commission, and European Council, they are all. For example, in United Nations, I think so. Our Prime Minister met to the European Council President Charles Michel, and the European Commission Parliament Madam. They have good meeting with them. Then European Parliament President. I think so. We need immediately our Prime Minister visit to EU. A lot of complication gap. Sometimes our minister they give some bad things in the media about the EU. EU is the best friend of Pakistan last 13 year, 3 decades. They help us. They want work with us. Our overseas Pakistani, they are in the parliament. Different things we are doing with together with the European Parliament. We need stand with the European Parliament, and they stand with us. India is a big market. There is no issue, but they working with us closely. For example, GSP plus, FATF, and occupied Kashmir cases and different things. They are with us. Stand.
Thank you very much, and welcome Shahzad Chaudhary Saab, Air Vice Marshal, and a well-known speaker and analyst. Shahzad Chaudhary Saab, we would like you to comment on the recent UN General Assembly session and your observation, and where Pakistan is standing at the international forum. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Sorry for being a bit late. I'm out of country, and so the time lag that is there between this place and Pakistan just got me going in the morning. But thank you very much, and I'm grateful that Copair found time and had me on the panel with some eminent people there. So thank you for that. I was asked to talk about the UNGA session, and when I asked your coordinator as to what really should I address in the UNGA session 2022. I said whatever you think of it. So anyway, so what I thought was that I'll try and make some sense of rather than, nitpick and bicker about what the UN has done or what has not done, or what should have the UN done, rather than us as Pakistanis dictating to the UN. I think it's a good idea to listen to or exactly understand as to where the UN is and where Pakistan concerns are, and see if they really coincide at any point of time. So if that be the objective, and if the chair will permit me that sort of flexibility, I like to say that for the for the original UN objectives, of course, peace and security was the key thing after the 1944 or 45 when the Second World War finished, and the world was meant to be created in the shape and form where peace and security with Western dominance would actually sustain and maintain. The Cold War, though, very soon developed its own dynamics, and it dictated the detente, therefore, that which came into play for so many years subsequently till about the end of or the end of 88, early 89. So that actually imposed its own structure on the peace and security. The peace and security was tenuous because of the poles, the Soviet Union and the US and NATO on opposing sides, but there were also numerous dynamics in between which kept the peace. But leave it there. But the peace and security in terms of a very large war has sort of sustained as an objective of the UN. Among the other objectives that the UN initially put into its agenda were, for example, health, food, human rights, conflict resolution, and not everything was done in the best of the ways at all times, but it has sustained as well till now. There have been some successes for the United Nations, and those are that not exactly from the United Nations, but deriving out of the peace and security construct was the global economic system, which actually has given us, or given the world, connectivity, especially after Soviet Union dissolved, and given us the prosperity that perhaps this globe has not seen for the last maybe 300 years, what it has been able to see in the last 30 years. So when you look at that sort of prosperity, so obviously that connectivity, that trade which goes around in the world has obviously had its impact. And if not directly from peace and security and conflict resolution point of view, but in terms of economic imperative that may have forced many regions to reconcile with each other in terms of their differences, it has brought about a change. Conflict resolution itself per se was a very limited kind, and more so where the Security Council found that it has its own interest, it was able to make an impact, but where it did not have its direct interest related, therefore we found that there were areas like Palestine, there were areas like Kashmir, for example, which were left unintended. Pandemic, of course, was another success, I would say, where the WHO finally came of age in my recognition in terms of how it evolved as a body. And then nuclear peace and deterrence, especially nuclear peace and deterrence, is an area where the UN and the arms limitations talks, etc., between the two major countries. But there were also failures. An equitable distribution of justice, human rights, and civilizational rights. I think not all people were considered worthy of similar human rights, and that was a major failure or a gaping hole in the United Nations way of looking at things. How has the UN changed and evolved is a very interesting thing, and because we got to understand why the UN has not been able to do what we think it should have been able to do. And the reason we find is that how the geopolitical structures from a global perspective after 1989 have now sort of compartmentalized into regional groupings. And that is how the world has now formed. Much more of regional interaction, geopolitical and economic, has driven that. And if you look at how the economic integration has affected the world, which has subsequently graduated to the geopolitical level as well, you'll find what I'm saying. For example, when you had the Eurozone, you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, you have the SAARC, the ASEAN, the NAFTA, the Trans-Pacific Trade, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at all of this, you realize that not only these economic blocks, they also forced a geopolitical inclination, which was very, very integrated. And therefore, you found that today, United States and the NATO, for example, or the Europe, not NATO, but US, United States and Europe, for example, if they were considered the West at one time, they're now considered more as an alliance. So therefore, when the economy is integrated at the regional level, The geopolitics followed quickly soon after. And wherever the politics and the economy have gotten together closer in these areas, you found that conflict resolution became an imperative for those regions. So when you look at that, you look at SARC and you say SARC has only 2% connectivity in the world. And the 2% of their trade actually goes within between them. 98% of the trade that SARC countries do, they do it with the rest of the world. When you have that kind of a disconnected region, disconnected land, disconnected area, just because you had Middle East, you had all the other Europe, you had other areas of the world which are now so regionalized, but SARC has remained fragmented and broken. They don't. So when SARC was so fragmented and disconnected, so obviously the countries have continued to live with the difficulties and the problems. Also, there were external factors which included the United States. That the lack of connectivity, the fragmentation that exists in the SARC division, SARC region, obviously has impacted on the fact that its conflicts have remained unattended and have become legacy problems. That is what we tend to say so much in Pakistan. But in my judgment, the background of it all is that the world has moved on. The world has sort of delegated itself into regionalized constructs of geopolitical and economic interest and conflict resolution. But we in the SARC region obviously neither have any connectivity, nor we have trade, nor we have relationships which are as buoyant as the rest of the world. And therefore, we have been unable to attend to our most pressing problems in this region. Whereas the difficulties that we see in this region are humongous and numerous, and therefore need immediate attention of the countries of the region. So if I were to just list out what are the Pakistan's current range of issues that Pakistan's interests actually dictates. For example, Pakistan would like to talk about Kashmir, and within that context, the human rights. But human rights then is a double-edged sword. So you talk of human rights of the Kashmiris, and many will begin to point out towards a human rights situation within Pakistan in certain sectors, certain segments of the society. However, Kashmir itself, which is of course an issue between Pakistan and India, therefore, because of these the convolutions that come along with this discussing this issue, shroud the importance of the fundamental rights of the people of Kashmir, which remain unattended simply because there is so much else that is going on within the SARC region, or lack of what is going on in the SARC region, that it remains unaffected and unattended, and therefore a core issue that we call between India and Pakistan. Whether the world is still interested? No, they're not. They have moved on, like I said. For example, they would expect the countries to, within themselves, try and resolve issues. Climate change and floods has just recently found interest. Because of the floods, climate change has found interest. And so therefore, we are now talking of climate change, but in a totally wrong context. Neither do we understand the basis of it, nor we do understand how the world can actually look into it. Whenever we talk of climate change, it is for asking for money, recompensation for a lack of carbon footprint that we think that we do not generate. So there are carbon mitigation measures, and there are rules and regulations of the United Nations in case you want carbon compensation. But we have taken it at a higher level, and we have said that, yes, because of this problem and because of the floods, we have economic challenges and we need a debt relief from our bilateral donors. So that is the kind of issue that I think we try and tend to the immediate rather than the historical and the long term. That's an area that is lacking very badly in our conception and enunciation of the problem. So with if these 2-3 things, major things, I'm talking of Kashmir, the climate change and the economic challenges and the debt, are the Pakistan's current range of issues. We're not looking into the future. We said this is our problem today. What are the UN's current obsessions? How does the UN, for example, in 1945, like I told you, when it came into being, it had peace and security, conflict resolution, and then food, health, etc., human rights, fundamental rights, other things. But what is it that they're now reshaping themselves for the United Nations? They are reshaping for pandemics. They're reshaping for climate change. And perhaps from the private climate change will appear poverty alleviation or the inequity that exists in the world in certain degrees. I hope it does. If it doesn't, well, again, that will become a major issue. Technology will become a major problem between nations. And while at the current moment, the technology is an area or a field where people are racing with each other in terms of being ahead of the between China and the US, for example, or for that matter, war between Russia and Ukraine, which is tend to put the Russian economic system behind. So when you look at all this, the technology sits at the core of all this. And technology will therefore drive your future interest of the United Nations. There will be a time, if not now, in 5 years, when the United Nations will begin to look at the technological aspects or technology as it evolves into artificial intelligence and other areas where, and the stem cells, if we know stem cells, artificial intelligence, which will then obviously mutate into an interest, a global interest, to try and control the spread of what shall be considered the adverse aspects of technology. And finally, space, which and its use, which will become obviously an area of international or United Nations obsession in the coming days. Now, if we look at the Pakistani range of issues and the United Nations current issues, you find that there is hardly any connection there, no connection between them. Pakistan is talking of what has been historically our problem or is immediate problem. The United Nations is more tuned to having divested or delegated the areas which are responsible for, which were the original problems of the world at 1945. They've gone on to newer issues, which are the new challenges to humanity, global humanity. So the question that we need to ask today is, where all can Pakistan hitch with the United Nations? We all complain of the fact that the United Nations doesn't listen to Pakistan. The nations of the world don't listen to Pakistan. Well, they don't listen to you simply because of the fact that you are currently irrelevant to them. You are meant to be in SARC, and you have a very poor record within SARC. You don't go along with SARC. But the rest of the world has worked its problems out and is moving or galloping very quickly. They say the prosperity that the world has seen in the last 30 years is unmatched even in the last 300 years. So when you look at those kind of figures, you realize that there is obviously something terribly lacking in how we in Pakistan tend to perceive ourselves and the world. So I think what is our immediate concern in Pakistan is the fact, how can we be more relevant to the world? The world looks at us and probably shuns us other than the mischief that we can perhaps bring to the world. And that's the bad, sad part of it. But climate change, poverty alleviation, millennium goals, development goals are the areas that I feel that Pakistan should be able to still make itself relevant and connect with the people.
Thank you very much, sir. There are certain questions which are asked by the listeners. If you allow, can I ask to Dr. Ambassador Abdul Basit Saab and Shahzad Chaudhry Saab? First question is, it's up to you, whoever answer is, that this, Pakistan is, we heard about the geo-economic importance of Pakistan. Do you think this statement you see that this is no more longer relevant? Because, do you think the Western powers are interested in our geo-economic position and we still can bargain on this regard? And how we should move our foreign policy to make Pakistan as a strong and friendly nation with other countries, when India is having economic interest with many powers, and with this new world order, how things are changing. So I request Dr. Ambassador Basit Saab and Shahzad Chaudhry Saab that one by one, if you comment on this, and then we move forward.
Economics, it all sound, I mean, these terms sound very fascinating, but at the end of the day, in my view, you cannot really sequester geoeconomics from geopolitics. All these things, go hand in hand, and they overlap, they influence each other. So there is nothing you can really, in a strict sense of the word, you can consider and say that we would only now, heretofore, we would be dealing only with geoeconomic matters and we would not be concerned about what is happening around us and in the region and at the global level. So this is, in my view, such narratives stem from the lack of understanding of how the world really works. Pakistan's, as was very rightly mentioned by the Marshal Saab, Pakistan has been facing myriad problems, challenges of humongous nature. There is no doubt about that. And I would, instead of blaming other countries, I think we need to look inwards. And unless and until we really put our house in order, as to say, it will continue to be very difficult for us to augment our international cloud. And unless you have international cloud, you develop international communities' positive stakes in Pakistan, you will continue to be irrelevant. Uh, and that would, and then you will keep on uh, kind of groping in the dark, and you would not really achieve much on the diplomatic front. So, first and foremost, there is no doubt that you need to put your house in order. Try to put your economy on back on track, so that and we have missed the boat. There is no doubt about that. We should have taken reforms 2 decades earlier, but we are still in the phase where we are thinking about different things but taking no action. So the question is how we diversify, widen our industrial base, how we become a truly exporting country, and how we benefit from our bilateral relations. Because, as I said in my introductory remarks, decisions about countries are not taken in New York or in Paris, or in New York or in Geneva. Decisions are taken in capitals, world capitals. So we need to invest first in our bilateral relations. My problem has always been that we do not invest in our bilateral relations, and then we expect at multilateral fora that people come and support us. It doesn't happen this way. It's the other way around. If we have good bilateral relations underpinned by some concrete mutual benefits, then you would see you will automatically have international support on different issues ranging from Jammu and Kashmir to global your flood situation, or Afghanistan for that matter. So it all hinges, it is contingent upon what kind of a clout you enjoy internationally. There is no doubt that our next door neighbor, India, has grown its economic stature worldwide. It is a member of Quad. It is member of G20, and now it is also chairing as CEO next year, also chairing presidency of the G20, and these 2 important summits will take place in India. But be that as it may, I would underline that Pakistan still has many strengths, geostrategic strengths. We are also a big country, and if we play our cards with some, I think we can still achieve much on the international front. The problem is that diplomacy does not like inconsistencies. Diplomacy does not like excessive rhetoric. Diplomacy is all about, agreeing on feasibles. And this is what I would say, that Pakistan has been lacking in these areas. We depend too much on rhetoric, and then that rhetoric is not complemented by actual policies. And then even if we make policies, we cannot really sustain them to beyond a certain point, and then everything falls apart. Be it any area. And so that is a dilemma. We need to also focus on our internal governance, in my view. And unless we focus on strengthening our civilian institutions, I doubt that Pakistan would ever be able to exploit its strengths in terms of its relations with other bilateral relations with other countries, and at such multilateral forums like the UN. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me, if you permit, Chair, I'll like to add on to what Dr. Basu just said. Let me give you an example of a pot of gold at home. If you have a pot of gold at home, but you never bring it to any purpose or any use, it will remain the same. So many of us in Pakistan believe that Pakistan's geography is something which is a pot of gold. But if your geography is pot of gold, and I'll tell you why I think it can be. It is not at the moment, but if it can be. But if you don't ever open the windows or the doors of that geography of yours, well, nothing really flows out of it, neither into it nor out of it. So what we've done is that we have cloistered ourselves from the rest of the world by fencing our borders, by closing everything, by saying we hate so and so, we're going to win the war with so and so, we're not going to work with so and so, etc., etc. So the world gradually has lost interest in you. You have a pot of gold at home, but for the last so many years, you haven't brought it to use. So it neither grows in size nor does it bring any benefit to you. So geography is a pot of gold that we have. Remember, we are a fulcrum nation. We're not a nation by itself which has any economic clout, but we are a fulcrum nation. One country that has found that out and has made some use of it is China, of course, and because of its very close political relationship with us, has been able to also give us a benefit of the CPEC. But where has the CPEC gone? What have we done as a people or as a system to try and maximize the benefits of the CPEC? And none whatsoever, very little, in fact. And it has been now lying stagnated and nothing really has come out of it. So whatever comes our way, even if a great friend tries to help you and tries to bring some benefit to you, you do not have the ability to leverage that to your advantage. You do not have the conception or the ability to conceive of how to do those things, what to do about it. You don't have the systems which will actually work in the favor or the benefit of the people of Pakistan rather than looking at the elites only. So that is one. But do we have an economic cloud? That's another point. Do we have an economic relevance today? No, when you're an indebted nation, when you are looking for loans and debts from everywhere, and you are trying to, your entire system works on the debt or the money that you receive, and you thrive in the fact, and you consider that a success as to what all money you've been able to be given to by donors, multilateral or bilateral. So obviously, when you are that kind of a state, then the world looks at you as, unfortunately, a basket case. So when you're a basket case, you're not an economy. So there is no economic death. There can be an economic potential. One, you need to get your things in order, as Dr. Saab said. And secondly, make sure that your economy is in a state of production where the world has benefit out of it. Where is that Pakistan can plug into global economy? Where is it that India has gone so far ahead of Pakistan and not stayed stuck with that ratio of 1:3 with Pakistan for such a long time? So that's an area we need to look at. India has opened up, India has gained and benefited tremendously. Pakistan has not. So I don't really believe that we have done enough, and we have enough. I think we'll need to break some long-held help ourselves in a way that I think we need to review how we work in SARC, within SARC. It may not be us alone, but can we make it happen? Can we ease things off? Like I said, there's so much of delegation to regionalization in the world today that economies as well as geopolitics has been regionalized. And we tend to forget that. United Nations has a different role today. It doesn't have a role to resolve issues which were of 1947, for example. It has a different role for the next, let's say, 20 or 30 years. It has graduated. It may have been forced to do that. It may have found that it was unable to do the things as equitably for everyone. But the United Nations has changed. The world has changed. The way of doing business in the world has changed. But we lag behind terribly. And that is why that question that you've asked, Ms. Amna, about the fact that whether Pakistan can leverage its economic potential or the geography, if I were to add a word to it, I think we can still do it, but it'll take us a great amount of work to find that relevance and then plug into the system, global economic system, and then be of relevance, and then say, yes, we are worthy of being looked at and being spoken to. Just merely, I agree with the fact, 220 million people, a nuclear power, it's too huge. We're not Dubai, we're not Hong Kong. But those are the models that we should look at. How those nations, city-states have become without producing anything, have become the fulcrum of global business or regional business. And that is an area that we need to perhaps look at. Pakistan has a similar sort of configuration, but at a much larger scale. Can Pakistan actually do that, or can we develop numerous smaller such nodes where regional trade can flow or global trade can be assisted. And therefore, when that happens, therefore, it creates a possibility for us to have a potential of a greater economic activity, which will give us greater muscle. Thank you.
May I add a word here, please, if you with
Ji,
your
sir,
permission?
please carry on.
You
Ji,
know,
sir.
marshals are very rightly pointed out that without regional connectivity, regional economic integration, things will continue to be very difficult for Pakistan. Yes, that is a very good argument to make. And I think since its inception in 1985, Pakistan has been struggling to inject some energy, subsistence into SARC. But unfortunately, my own experience tells me that SARC will remain sort of dysfunctional or would never be able to realize its potential unless and until Pakistan and India define for themselves an irreversible trajectory of a cooperative relationship. Because, you know, regional cooperative frameworks cannot be built on rickety and unpredictable bilateral relations. In the case of SARC, we have seen time and again that even we have so many frameworks ranging from free trade to addressing terrorism issues, but nothing really has worked. Nothing has worked primarily because of the reason that Pakistan and India have not been able to develop mutual trust, which is a sine qua non for any regional connectivity and interdependence. So my view on this is that Pakistan needs to have a very long-term, clear idea as to how it would like to have its relations with India. I think it's long overdue. I would agree with Shehzad Saab that it's long overdue, but the question remains that how to bridge the chasm, the trust chasm which the two countries have. And that to me is almost impossible unless there is some kind of an understanding or a solution to the long pending Jammu and Kashmir dispute. My own experience tells me that no matter how much you try, you engage with India in formal structured dialogue process, but you will always come back to square one for a variety of reasons. And then we start again investing our energies in breaking that given deadlock. So our relationship has been moving from an impasse to an impasse. So my own contention is that yes, regional connectivity is important, regional economic cooperation is important, but I do not see as to how this can happen unless and until there is some tangible, irreversible bilateral movement taking place between India and Pakistan. And that cannot happen unless there is some solution, a permanent solution to the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. This is what my view has always been, and I'm still very much convinced that this will continue to be the case, at least, you know, in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Basit Saab and Shehzad Chaudhry Saab. I have two more questions, and these questions are from our research associates. Basically, our team is working on digital diplomacy because you all are the best experts of the traditional diplomacy, but now the Foreign Office has developed their communication and strategic wing, and they are also working on digital diplomacy, and our research associates are also working on digital diplomacy. So how this do you think can create an impact in the foreign policy, and there should be a separate foreign policy on this digital diplomacy or a separate department? Because Basit Saab, you headed as a former ambassador. And my second question is with Shehzad Chaudhry Saab, that multilateralism is considered a solution to globalization. You both mentioned about regional connectivity and its importance, and I agree that this SARC, because I myself is the life member of SARC, And SAARC Chamber of Commerce initiated certain agreements, and their women chamber is also very active, and even they give the allow Afghanistan to be the part in it. And we met many entrepreneurs at that forum. But unfortunately, due to this bone of contention between Pakistan and India, we are unable to make it an effective regional organization. So I first request Basit Saab, please give your opinion about digital diplomacy. Do you think it is effective and important in this hybrid warfare era? And
Oh,
second question would be from Shehzad Chaudhry Saab for multilateralism. Is it the solution, and how Pakistan can play an important role? Thank you.
no, as far as digital diplomacy or public diplomacy, that has become an important and unavoidable component of diplomacy or to achieve your foreign policy objectives. That goes without saying. But the problem with Pakistan is, and I can tell you again, because I worked as a foreign office spokesman for about 4 years, the foreign office does not have the wherewithal in order to, really conduct public diplomacy in a sustainable manner. For example, even at present, our foreign office spokesperson is also heading a territorial division. So he's holding two important positions. He is a spokesperson of the foreign office. At the same time, he's also in charge of our multilateral diplomacy or UN organizations. So how can you expect a person to be doing, one human being to be doing justice to do these two very onerous assignments? And then, for example, in India, I know for a fact that their spokesperson office, he at least has around 40 people working for him and round the clock. So in Pakistan, obviously there are resource constraints; those are there. But without investing in public diplomacy, obviously you leave the space open for your detractors, not only to blight your image internationally, but also not allow you to achieve or to realize your long-term foreign policy objectives. So I would very much like our government or Ministry of Foreign Affairs in particular to focus on this and have the right people at the right place because public diplomacy, as I said, needs continuity, consistency, and then people who are involved in public diplomacy should be cognizant of how nuances are built and how it needs finesse in whatever you do. So that is very important. And I think, as for your second question, very briefly, I may say multilateralism is important. There is no question. But at the end of the day, bilateral relations matter. And Pakistan should invest in bilateral relations rather than focusing overwhelmingly on multilateralism. Multilateralism is important, but UN has failed the world as a matter of fact on many counts. You see Palestine, you see Kashmir, you see Yemen, you see Syria, you see Iraq. I can give you, countless examples. Multilateralism is important. It's important part of your diplomacy, but Pakistan, in my view, should be investing more in bilateral relations. Thank you very much.
Okay, quickly on to the second question, Ms. Amna, that you asked of me. I'd like to similarly first comment on the digital diplomacy side of your question, which Dr. Basit has very ably answered. तो मैं ये कह रहा था कि digital diplomacy में I think one thing that Dr. Basit, I'm sure, is listening to it, and I'm sure he'll agree to it, is the fact that we as a people and as a system need to differentiate between information and disinformation. So when you talk of digital diplomacy, a lot of us think disinformation is digital diplomacy. And a lot of it has come about as a fad in the last some years, 10 years or so, in terms of trying to develop teams which will convey your point of view. And the point of view, we need to know the art of creating a narrative And that narrative cannot entirely be built on disinformation. That's a very important point, and I think that is where we failed miserably when we get onto those areas. But your basic question about multilateralism and SARC, I had the opportunity of, as the High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, host or be a part of the team that participated as the ambassador there in Sri Lanka, High Commissioner, in the 2008 SARC conference, which was a 3 to 4 day long, entire thing, as it happens every few years. So I was, along with the leadership of Pakistan, closely observed how we interacted with different people, what was the purpose, how we were moving on in SARC. I think SARC has been held back by India and Pakistan. So if there is a bilateral thing that will unlock and unleash SARC from its stranglehold, that shall be the bilateral talk between India and Pakistan. That must take place to open up SARC to its potential. SARC has a potential, economic, socio-economic, socio-political, as well as political. But that potential is not being unlocked and unleashed simply because of the fact that India and Pakistan hold it back. India has no reason to now talk to Pakistan. Pakistan has been left irrelevant by India. India has moved on. They moved into a different category. Today, when you look at SCO, you say SCO is strong because of the fact that China, Russia, and India sit on the head table along with other countries. And then there is a second tier of Pakistan and Iran, etc., that are members of the SCO now. So India has moved league as far as Pakistan is concerned. And we need to appreciate that. And we need to understand that. We need to also see the economic disequilibrium in the two nations. And when you look at those things, you realize that you are fighting already, unfortunately, a lost battle with another nation. So you got to find ways and means to work that out. Try and create a potential. We've been doing very well vis-a-vis India for the first 50 years, 60 years of our life. But in the last 15 years, we've lost it. We've lost a track. And that is where is what has happened in terms of India and Pakistan disengaging and sort of ambulating from each other and therefore moving away. And I think that's an area that we need to look at very closely. I tend to believe in the fact that if Pakistan must unlock and unleash its potential, it shall have to be by a bilateral, whatever way it takes place. It may be a very hard talk. We may need to move away from our long-held positions. We may need to, but then only, it's not what has happened to the Chinese situation in this CPEC. It's meant to be a north-south corridor. Where is that corridor now? Why isn't it really giving out the potential that it carries with it? Simply because of the fact that there are no lateral connectivities which should flow out of it. A north-south corridor is just trucks moving up and down, and that's about it. And I think that's an area, and we tend to lock ourselves into those bilateral relationships with China and with one or two other countries and say this is what shall serve Pakistan better in the long run. No, it shall not serve, in my judgment. I know Dr. Saab feels differently, but in my judgment, they do not lock differently. They do not. You got to be doing the same thing as the rest of the world, and therefore see how it is possible to move on with India. And if nothing else, get the trade going. We'll see. We'll talk about other stuff later. Maybe there's got to be a more innovative way of working your things out. And with that, Ms. Amna, I'm going to make a request to leave the forum because I got some other commitment immediately after. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to see Basit Saab and everybody else at home. I see General Naeem Khalid also appearing on the screen somewhere. So all of you, thank you very much. And I hope I'm permitted to leave, Ms. Amna.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for joining, and we welcome, inshallah, looking forward to work together. And I would like to welcome General Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, who is
Yes,
here. We just asked him for the last movement. So, sir, your opinion about this current UN General Assembly session, sir?
Thank you very much. We all know that without going into the detail that how actually this United Nations has degenerated into certain interest groups, and instead of solving the problems, at times we have found that they linger on with issues although some good secretary generals have been coming and trying their best, but of course the influence of greater powers cannot be overstated. This time, we all understand that the main subjects which kept them busy, or which were dominant throughout all these debates. One was the Ukraine war, and a lot of nearly every country spoke on that. Then there was this climate change, environmental issues. So these were the leading things, and of course people did talk about Afghanistan and the other subjects which are mostly lip service, and they are not doing anything concrete about it. But I think, having said that, it became quite clear that how the world has been divided into various camps. There's a Russo-Chinese camp, there's a neutral camp, and then there's a Western European and American camp. Middle East is generally with this camp. African countries are split, Asian countries are split. So this is how the things went on. Anyway, I think it is always better to have something rather than nothing. So it was a debate which will have little effect on the international politics, which will have little or no effect on the international economy, and things will keep moving as per the desire and the interest of the strong countries. The weaker ones will just keep looking at each other and keep looking up to these powers for help and all that, which may or may not come according to their interest. As far as Pakistan's Prime Minister, I think he covered most of the things which were required to be covered. He did talk about Afghanistan, he did talk about Kashmir, and he also brought out a very important point which most of the world, I think, agreed to, that the countries which are suffering from the climate change are not the ones which are contributing to this, catastrophe, because advanced and modern countries are contributing more, and all the brunt is being faced by the countries which are poor, countries which are not, emitting any carbon emissions and all that. So I think, all said and done, it was an event which takes place, of course, in due time. But if I have to say that whether it was effective or non-effective, I would say it was more of a talk, and action we'll have to see in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much, Ambassador Basit, Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, Shahzad Chaudhry Saab, and Akib for organizing and and participating. I wish you good luck, and Pakistan Zindabad, Paindabad, for sure.
Thank you.